I don't know about you, but that intro song hits harder than a snowball with a rock in the middle of it.
Do you know that from experience, Kyle?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It's been snowing here for the last week.
Well, welcome to the show, everybody. I'm A.M. Grabelny, one of your hosts here for AWS OnAir. If you're joining us for the first time, thank you for being a friend.
And if you're here for the longest time, you're still our favorites. But welcome back, everyone. We are AM and Kyle. Let me introduce myself for a second. I'm Kyle. There we go. And we are kicking off Friday, 12 p.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern. Someone in the chat's going to have to cover the other time zones for me. And speaking of other time zones, where is our audience tuning in from today? We love to hear where everyone's tuning in from. We like to know for global, worldwide. Mr. Worldwide.
Oh, yes, the bull, the pit bull. We get people in chat saying greetings, and they're giving time zones in Spain for you, Kyle. I was gonna let you go.
By the way, 2100 is 9 o'clock.
Waiting for you to go through every
from Dubai
time zone possible.
That's awesome. What time is it in Dubai? I'm curious.
you love
I love time zones.
Temporal. Yeah.
Which I don't understand how time zones are a thing, because if the sun is just beating on the flat earth all at the same time, why do time zones exist?
Well, I think I'm gonna have to show you some other videos after we wrap up today about the globe. Anyway.
Okay, fine. Well, hey, you know what? We're not here to debate whether the earth is flat or birds are real. We're here today to be talking about what is awesome and new in the world of AWS. And if you're not familiar with this show and you're joining us for the first time, AM and I get the awesome opportunity to bring folks within AWS to you to ask questions about these new services and features. And what I'm really excited about today is we're going to be talking about a new security feature. That's right.
Oh.
And if you didn't know, now you know.
Is that why you're here?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah. That and everyone else is probably unavailable.
I see.
And you're here because no one else wants to host with me anymore. They're like,
oh, yeah. Nobody wants to host with me either. We're in the same boat, buddy.
When us become one. There's a song in there somewhere. Who can think of a song about friends
spice up your life?
Spice up your life.
People of the world. All right. Speaking of people of the world, thank you. We're seeing everybody joining us from all over the world to learn about what's going on at AWS. So if you're new to tech, if you're new to security, let us know. If you're new to cloud, tell us what you've been learning about. What are you interested in? If you're an expert in security already, tell us what area of security is your favorite area. Do you have a favorite area?
Even if you're not an expert in security, our goal is to make security as approachable as possible, at least in the presence of Kyle, and engaging and fun. Security is everyone's priority. It's top priority at AWS.
That's right.
My favorite part of security.
You have a favorite?
I mean, I'm partial to incident response and threat detection.
Okay.
But the one thing I am very partial to, that's kind of like saying, who's your favorite child? Even though I just have the one. I would say what I really like about security is making it as accessible and approachable to everyone of all skill levels.
Okay. We got some people in chat. We got a computer forensics.
Forensics. That's
pretty
awesome.
Fascinating.
Yes, day one, but maybe tomorrow I'll finish PAC CPT. Oh, okay. This is my favorite show from John in the Cloud.
John in the Cloud, favorite show.
Is he watching this from the cloud?
John also didn't state this, but I can tell we are John's favorite hosts also of the show.
Yeah. Is it because John only joins when we're hosting?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen John.
I'm pretty sure my wife can hear me from the other room because she was like, wow, you're hilarious. I'm like, yeah, thank you. So is the rest of the world.
My roommates, Blanche, Dorothy, Sophia, they're off in the kitchen. They're eating some cheesecake, so they're not paying attention. We are going to have
a turkey on his head. So with that being said, you know what? People are going, gosh, when can they just get to the point?
Oh, you've tuned into the wrong show for that.
Yeah,
'cause
exactly.
You got us too, but we're going to be talking firewall today. Yeah.
Yeah, and not just any firewall, DNS firewall. And for
Oh.
those that aren't aware, DNS is actually I wouldn't say common, but a technique to where unauthorized users can use DNS to kind of tunnel communications in the guise. They're disguising themselves
Interesting.
and using DNS to, maybe send data out that shouldn't be going out.
Okay.
And we're going to be talking about some advanced features. We'll pepper them with questions about, first of all, why DNS firewall, and then we'll talk about how we can enable it. But you know what?
You're bringing our guests on?
Yeah, I think we should bring our guest on. We're going to ask, hey, you know what? It's actually not Nick that has to press the buttons today. It is Tina. Tina's in the background. Tina, can we bring on our guest in the awesome trend? We got Lawton and Adish joining us today, and I actually received confirmation not only can my wife hear me from the other room, our neighbors can too. So I told you I'm excited about this. How could I not be? This is really cool stuff. All right, so I won't introduce themselves. I'll let them do it because they could do it better. And all I know is that there's an awesome plushie behind Lawton. Anyway, who are you? What do you do? And what value do you bring to the table at today's show?
Adish, I'll let you take it away first.
Thanks. Hello, everyone, to all our viewers of AWS OnAir. My name is Adish Bhove. I'm a product manager here at AWS. I've been here for just over 5 years, primarily working in the security space. I really enjoy the space. We have seen a lot of products launch over the last couple of years that have made a lot of difference to our customers. And I'm really excited to talk about a new launch here, DNS Firewall Advanced. I think it's the next iteration of DNS Firewall that our customers have been asking for. So excited to talk about that.
Awesome. And Lawton, off to you.
Awesome. So yeah, my name is Lawton Pittenger. I'm a security specialist solutions architect here at AWS. I focus mainly on our network and application protection services. So you can basically think all of AWS firewall services, and I'll be leading the demo portion of today's call. So happy to demo the new feature today.
Nice. So Kyle started giving us a little bit of an intro here, but I wanted to just keep it really simple to begin with. If you listen to popular tech jokes, you will know that DNS is often
always DNS.
Yeah,
always DNS.
Every problem that you've ever experienced is always DNS. That's a very popular tech joke. But can we give just a quick kind of summary of where DNS sits in the stack and what it's used for across networking before we jump into what we're doing with a firewall around it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think DNS has been probably one of the most exploited ways to send or exfiltrate data from customers. This process is typically called DNS exfiltration, where you typically have a bad actor that compromises an application, could be in your VPC, and then uses DNS lookups to send out data to that domain that's hosted by the bad actor. And that's where product like DNS Firewall that we launched a few years ago comes into the picture, where you can really create rules and policies to filter and regulate any outbound DNS traffic to these bad domains. Happy to talk a little bit more, but DNS Firewall Advanced is really taking that to the next level by helping you stop more advanced threats like domain generation algorithms or DNS tunneling that can't typically be surfaced using threat intelligence. You need more advanced capabilities to stop those threats.
And for those that might not be familiar with the terminology of DNS, when you type in Amazon.com, you're typing in a fully qualified domain. Maybe, I don't know. Keep me honest here, folks. But when you type in that name, things in magic are happening in the background to resolve that to almost like a street address, to an IP address to where that should go. Sometimes It could also go to another alias, kind of like a forward address for the mail station. Jeez. Oh my gosh. Right.
Post office?
Office.
But you're right. You're right on, Kyle. Like, Amazon.com, that's the human version of where you want to visit, right? And
Yep.
then there's behind the scenes, all of the server side computer version of how do I get to that, from Amazon.com, me as the human, how do I get to it, in terms of all the networking infrastructure, all the servers that are running, the IP addresses, and DNS has famously been one of the protocols used. And it propagates, right? Like that's a very common term that you hear when people talk DNS. It propagates out like all of this information about where to find the thing that serves up Amazon.com for you when you type it into your browser.
Yeah. And so when we're talking about DNS firewall, this isn't something that like you need to spin up a new appliance, right? Because Route 53 resolver is being used even when you have just resources using the default configuration settings of a VPC or a virtual private cloud to connect to the internet or communicate to the interwebs.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Router resolver comes by default to all VPCs. It's been used by customers today. If you want additional security for traffic going out from your router resolver to any domains, that's where DNS firewall comes into the picture, where you can opt in to create rules to either block bad domains that you know of, or you can create a more walled garden approach to say, I only want to allow access to these specific domains, everything else gets blocked. So you have these options that come with DNS firewall today. So it gives you a holistic approach to blocking.
Yeah, and so we had DNS firewall, and it's been around for a hot minute. It's been around for years, right?
Yeah.
Now, what is now the future state with this new feature that was announced and that we're going to be walking through that kind of changes the game for DNS firewall?
Yeah, that's the perfect segue into DNS Firewall Advanced. So over the years, as bad actors have become more sophisticated, they've been using or leveraging new tactics to really create attack mechanisms. The most common way to do that is DNS tunneling, where an attacker has already, they already have a malware or a botnet sitting on an application or instance, and that's phoning home, to a bad domain somewhere that is hosted by the bad actor. So the data is getting exfiltrated over from your application over to the bad actor over DNS, and maybe the customer is not even aware of that. This gets even more advanced when attackers start using domain generation algorithms. Now, for those who don't know, domain generation algorithms is where a bad actor creates hundreds or thousands or sometimes even millions of domains that they just run through for exfiltrating data. So it becomes much harder for your typical threat intelligence feeds to really track that, and they alone can't really block these bad domains.
You end up almost playing like a game of whack-a-mole where you're trying to address, all the, I mean, believe it or not, those that want to do harm to like infrastructure, like cybersecurity stuff, they scale stuff out too. Speaking of scaling, well architect a framework for resiliency, scale your stuff. Anyway, they want to be resilient, but they also want to make it harder for those that are looking at the bits, bytes, and bobs to trace their activity. And so they're scaling to hundreds to thousands, dare I say millions of domains. But there seems to be a way that we can address this, because instead of trying to look at it by the domain and maybe the reputation of a domain, how could we, work back from that and say, like, you know what, instead of tracking the domains and the reputation, big reputation.
Hey, Kyle.
What?
I want to look at some bits and bytes and bobs. Can we ask Lawton to pull this up while we continue talking about kind of the theory? I like to see it though.
Time out. We are about to do a demo.
That's true.
Without the demo dance.
We weren't adequately,
you know what happened last time?
assessing
You
the
and I
threat.
hosted and we didn't do a demo dance.
Yeah. I don't like to think about it.
Okay. All right. So let's do the demo dance. All right. 1 and a 2 and a. Demo dance complete. Now let's bring up Lawton's screen.
Awesome. So in the demo today, we're just going to demo an actual DNS tunneling example. So on the left here, we have what's simulating as like a compromised server, where we'll install a C2 implant and basically establish command and control server connection with this command and control server. So to get started, just going to fire up and show that as of right now, there's currently no connections. And for the C2 portion of the demo today, we're going to be using Sliver, which is an open source command and control server framework. And we're going to be doing this, command and control interactions over the DNS protocol. So first, we can just see that, there's no beacons or no sessions, do not have any sort of, C2 connectivity. So let's go ahead and fix that. And what we're simulating today is essentially a software supply chain attack. Say you're installing software from a third party or some type of open source software, and that's been compromised. And when you think, you might be installing your legitimate software update from softwareupdate.com, you're actually might be installing a C2 implant and executing that C2 implant. So that's what we're going to be.
And one thing I do want to mention to the audience, Lon did a lot of footwork to get this to work. It's not that it's this simple, okay?
Exactly.
But to demonstrate what DNS Firewall Advanced does, Lon has been burning cycles to get this. So it's easy because this is a baking show, right?
Yep.
But for those unauthorized users, it's not as easy as.
Correct. And I saw one question about the integration of network firewall with DNS firewall. So the way that kind of differs is, your DNS requests are actually going to go to the Route 53 resolver. So they're actually not going to pass through your network firewall. So these DNS requests are not going to be seen by network firewall. So that's where you would need something like DNS firewall to get visibility into this attack surface as well.
Thanks for addressing that question, because I was going to bring that up. Lon's on it.
Yeah, we hear that from customers all the time. Oh, I'm already using network firewall, or I'm already using WAF. Why do I need DNS firewall? So that's kind of how they all fit together. So as you can see now, since we updated our software, so to say, we actually installed the C2 implant and executed that implant. So if we jump back over to the Sliver server, we can see that we now have a beacon that is beaconing out. And we can see that that is over the DNS protocol. So let's just go ahead and use that beacon to try and run some commands. Just a basic
Imperial shampoo.
And for those who might not be super familiar with C2 servers, a beacon is essentially just this server is going to beacon out to the command and control server. It's set to beacon out every 5 seconds. So when I issue one of these commands, it essentially just adds it to the queue, and every 5 seconds it'll execute that command. So as we can see here, we've got back that we are in the temp directory, and let's say on this server, we have some credentials, which you shouldn't have credentials stored on your server, but let's just say, we're storing database creds on this server.
I see your password.
So on the Sliver side, we can actually see this as well too. Oh, there's the creds via the C2. So this is just
bad. Bad.
So this is just a super basic, DNS C2 example. So let's just get into how we would actually block this with DNS Firewall Advanced. So I'm going to jump over to the DNS Firewall Advanced console.
Ooh,
and
an AWS console. Love to see it.
And right here, we just have an empty DNS Firewall rule group. So we're going to add some DNS Firewall Advanced rules. Is this too zoomed in? Should I go ahead and, is that better?
I don't know, chat. What do you think? I think that it looks great.
Okay. So first rule I'm going to put is just to block DNS tunneling. And we're going to set the confidence to high. So I'll explain a bit what this means in a second. So traditionally before DNS Firewall Advanced, you just had these domain lists that you could choose from. Now with DNS Firewall Advanced, you have this other option to enable the DNS Firewall Advanced protections. So for this use case, we're going to be selecting DNS tunneling. As Adish mentioned, there's also, DGA options as well. And essentially you configure a confidence threshold. So this is basically how confident the model on the back end is that this is either a DNS tunneling threat or a DGA threat. It comes in high, medium, or low. So high is, going to be only the most certain and well corroborated threats. Medium is going to be kind of a balance between high and low. Detects a reasonable number of threats while maintaining a manageable level of false positives. And low is going to catch a lot more. It's going to increase the detection rate, but it'll catch more potential threats. So what we're going to do in the demo today is we're just going to set it to block on high threats, or threats with a confidence threshold of high, and we're going to set it to just alert for anything with a confidence threshold of low.
And the reason why we're looking at confidence thresholds is because this is based on behavior, right? This isn't like you're establishing a baseline of behavior for then the confidence levels to affect, change, or block traffic, right? That's why it's not like
legitimate traffic goes over
That's right.
DNS all the time, right? So you have to figure out which is not so legitimate, right?
Correct, yeah.
Correct.
So I'm going to put in the rule here for DGA now. It's going to be essentially the same thing, just select DGA instead of DNS tunneling.
And one thing I think is great to note too is that I saw that there's two actions. There's alert and then there's block. So if you're wanting to bring this in and you're trialing it out or testing it out, you can set it to alert without potentially impacting and just understand what's happening in your environment. So you could say, hey, one, this is potential funny business that's going on, so you can investigate it. Or then you can eventually switch the bits and bobs and bytes to block the traffic.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Kyle. This is, and I think Lawton, you're showing that, but a lot of customers actually do that where they put all the low threshold rules in alert mode. And then we have later in the demo, we'll also see Security Hub come into the picture where you can view all these findings and can take actions. So you're not blocking anything that could potentially hamper your availability.
All right.
So I just created the rules, and now we have to associate this rule group to our VPC. And as you can see, this may take a few minutes. So while this is applying out to our VPC, I already have a sample log from running through this demo yesterday. So we're just going to shift over to that for the sake of time.
Through the art of television magic.
Exactly.
Is it television? We're on TV.
So when DNS Firewall Advanced actually blocks one of these, DNS tunneling attacks, this is a sample log entry that it will generate. So as you can see here, the query name, this was the DNS name that it was essentially using for DNS tunneling. We've got a very not obvious domain called dnstunnel.com. Typically in the real world, wouldn't be this obvious, but as you can see, it's appending a very long kind of encoded subdomains on these. And this is how it actually gets the information across using the DNS protocol. DNS is kind of a question and answer system. So it uses that to essentially exfiltrate data. And we can see down here at the bottom that the firewall rule action was block and that the firewall action was DNS tunneling. So for alert, if you were to configure this in alert, it would be a similar type of log. You would see that it caught something. You could see the EC2 instance ID here as well too. So you could know, hey, something's probably going on with this EC2 instance. Let's go investigate. And as Adish mentioned as well too, they recently just launched integration with Security Hub. So you can also see DNS firewall findings within Security Hub via the integrations. So if you go to Security Hub and to integrations and just search for DNS, you can see, zoom out again too, just because I'm on the tiny laptop screen. You can see that it's currently accepting findings from DNS Firewall for the AWS lists or any custom domain lists. Haven't configured that, but it's as simple as this. You just click accept findings and it'll start accepting those findings. And for DNS Firewall Advanced as well. So let's just take a look at what this finding would look like within Security.
And then while that's loading, Security Hub is a service that centralizes the different security findings that the different security services within AWS can generate. So you have this comprehensive view. That's the Security Hub pitch to those that have not been familiar with Security Hub until now.
Yep. Thanks for that added context. That definitely helps. So the findings will appear here, and you can see the severity is critical because we are actually blocking, DNS tunneling. So that indicates that there's some type of, malware or C2 implant on that server, and that you're going to want to go investigate it. So if you click into the finding as well too, you could investigate with Amazon Detective to dive deeper and, put together some more threats. And you can actually see, the product name was Route 53. So this was blocked by DNS Firewall Advanced. If you scroll down, you can see the EC2 instance ID so that, if your SOC team is reviewing through Security Hub logs, they could see this, they could check out the EC2 instance ID, go investigate the instance, perform, further investigation on that. So with that being said,
these findings appear by default, so you don't have to switch anything on Security Hub side.
Love it.
Correct. Yep. So if we go back over to the Sliver server, if our thing has propagated, which looks like it has, and if we run beacons again, we can see that it has missed its check-in. So that
Oh,
red
no.
means it is missing its check-in. So
Oh,
it's supposed to be beaconing out, but it is no longer. So we
Beacon,
can see
can
that.
you hear me?
So we can see that the C2 implant has been killed with just a basic DNS Firewall advanced rule.
We
Awesome.
got about 1 minute left. This has been incredibly informative, and it's very, for me as like a person who doesn't work security, 24/7 as part of their job. It's always incredible to me to see the attack patterns that like people come up with. Like, let's shove a bunch of stuff through DNS protocol, right? Like, let's see what'll get through. Like, it's incredible, and then the people who are guarding you have to come up with like plans to mitigate that. So very cool to see all this come together. Very, interesting to see, how you all are thinking to help people. Speaking of helping people, do you have any final recommendations on what they should
any
go
ways
do?
that you could get hands-on on this?
Yes, I do
Yeah.
actually. So we actually host what's called activation days, where we kind of go through the security services and provide prescriptive guidance to achieve outcomes when using AWS. We go through like overviews of the services. We dive deep with hands-on labs into the services. You can actually get hands-on experience with this exact C2 demo that I just showed on today's call in the network firewall and DNS firewall activation days. We have this deployed in the workshop with like step-by-step instructions of how to use the implant, how to block it with both network firewall first, and then it fails over to using DNS. So you can block it on both the firewall services. So yeah, check out the activation days. We'll be sure to drop a link to these. They're free events. Just go ahead and register. We have one upcoming next week and the week after that as well. So yeah, definitely check them.
Well, thanks to this dynamic duo, now we got to introduce our next favorite dynamic duo coming up with Repost. Do we do like...
Hello, my name is Anup Shivadas. I'm a principal solutions architect here at AWS. I'm based out of Northern Virginia, Herndon area. Boy, I love that demo, Dan, and I love that demo. And today I'm joined by Jay from Iowa. Jay, do you want to say hi?
Hello, world. I'm Jay Bush. I'm a senior technical account manager based from the lovely state of Iowa. Anup and I, of course, are your favorite hosts from AWS Repost Live. And Repost, of course, is your favorite platform, not just for Q&A, right, Anup? Right? Let's dispel that right off the top. Not just for Q&A, but for your favorite tech content, knowledge articles, etc. So be sure to head over to repost.aws, sign up with your builder ID, and engage with Anup, myself, my friend Stephen Heverin, who's out there. Shout out to Stephen. It's the best community on the internet, right? So I know we're covering security, right? Everybody's favorite topic, including your favorite paranoid network engineer out there. So let's go ahead and dive in, Anup. I know we don't have that much time.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we have a lot of questions which is coming. But again, please ask questions throughout this episode. We would love to get your questions. That's what we do in this Repost live show. We
Drop
take
it in
your
chat.
questions, we answer, we dive deep. Jay and I, we kind of scan the Repost content to kind of look for questions, and we just want to answer that and get it going, right? With that, we have an exciting questions. And today we were talking about DNS Firewall, right? I love the topic. And I was looking at the questions here, and I see a questions around how do I configure anti-spoofing rules, right? So this question is coming from one of the Repost users, and it talks about, my app is deployed on ECS Fargate. By the way, I love Fargate. Serverless is the future. And use load balancer. How can I configure the network default anti-spoofing rule, right? Anti-spoofing, anti-spoofing, however you want to say it. How do you do that, right? So let's take a pause. And we have an answer here as well, which is great. But I feel like we can add a little more because you have advanced DNS firewall configurations and whatnot. It's the best time to kind of talk about that, right? So let's kind of take a step back and talk about what exactly is anti-spoofing is all about, right? So essentially, right, anti-spoofing is a technique that prevents attackers, right? We kind of want to prevent attackers from impersonating, legitimate systems, networks, right? Or users by falsifying data, right? IP addresses, DNS records, right? That's why we are here, email headers, for example, right? So that's anti-spoofing. That's a technique, right? And when it comes to DNS spoofing specifically, right, because we are in the focus on DNS especially, right? So DNS spoofing is all about like manipulating DNS responses to redirect users to malicious sites, right? That's all about DNS spoofing. So how do you do this anti-spoofing, right? Jay, we get this question all the time too, right? So there are essentially multiple ways, right? One comes top of mind is a DNSSEC, right? Domain name system security extension. That essentially validates DNS response, right? It actually uses some amazing cryptographic signatures and whatnot. That's one way to do it, right? The other way is essentially the topic of the day, which is DNS firewall, right? Route 53 DNS firewall. Adish was talking, and we saw the demo as well, right?
That was great.
Exactly. Talks about DNS tunneling and domain generation algorithms, right? So it can go a long way, right? So I would ideally suggest the user, and we're going to update the post as well, saying that hey, start using the advanced techniques, right? And that'll actually go a long way and give you a lot of value for you, right? That's the number one question we had. Moving on, again. This question is also interesting, right? So the question is all about, hey, how can an organization centrally configure and manage Route 53 resolver, rules across multiple accounts, right? Jay, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with this. We always get this,
It's a pretty common use case, right?
Everybody, every enterprise, right? Enterprise, every big, massive AWS customers have multi accounts, right? They have organization, AWS organization. I love AWS organization. So the question is around how do I get, how do I configure DNS firewall, all these configurations in that multi-account org-wide setup, right? Again, you can see, actually, we fed this question, right? AWS Repost Live. It's actually asked by AWS Repost Live. You're all welcome to follow us so that you can see the interactions by following AWS Reports Live as well. And we have the answer. We answered the question today morning as well. But essentially, right, there are two ways, and then the most important way and the highly recommended approach is use AWS Firewall Manager, right? That's again one of the services which we have in our portfolio, which can configure these firewall, DNS firewall too, in a seamless fashion, right? From an org, from an multi-account account standpoint, you can configure a firewall manager and you can go from there, right? That's the most important recommendation. The benefits is, as you have new VPCs, it can inherit the policies, right? So it's pretty seamless in that fashion, right? So that's the number one recommendation. You can actually use DNS or Route 53 profile with shared rule groups as well. But again, my primary recommendation stays that consider Firewall Manager first, right, before we go further from there, right? These are the questions I had, which I noted. Jay, I am pretty sure that you have seen some questions too, right?
I pulled a few questions that I thought might be interesting for the purposes of the show. Quick question for chat. Drop your use cases. If any of these sound very familiar, you're curious, maybe you use WAF or network firewall today, and you're just curious about where Route 53 resolver DNS firewall might fit, drop those in chat. Drop those use cases in chat. But I pulled a few questions myself, Anoop. I thought that was excellent guidance here. Pulled a few questions. The first one that I pulled was around some guidance. Looks like I'll give you the TLDR. We got a user out here that maybe suspects a bit of malicious activities afoot, and they're really just looking for some guidance here about what security service they might be able to leverage, preferably what automated security service they might be able to leverage. There's many ways to skin this cat, of course. That's the beauty of AWS, but if you missed our earlier demo, this question definitely harkens back based on some of the characteristics, right? Like the specific attack here mentioned is a command and control communication. This may be a good reference for you to rewind back and check out that demo, but this definitely has all of the makings of a good DNS firewall or resolver DNS firewall use case here, right? where you get some of the enforcement and filtering rules. You get some of the automation by subscribing to those intelligence feeds, right? And get some of the real-time protection. So I thought this was a pretty cool use case. I probably intend after this episode, Anu, to just write back to this user and throw them some links from that particular service and some of the advancements or announcements around advancements that we just made. I think the second one I pulled was in that similar vein, really looking to understand a bit of the logging capabilities specifically. And this, I thought that the user did a really good job in responding, or our Repost bot, I suppose, did a really good job in responding to the types of logging telemetry you get from our firewall service. So not just your, basic kind of query logging, right? And some of the columns here that you can see, right, from firewall rule group, ID, et cetera. But you'll get some of the origin VPC, origin IP type data, right? But you also get some of the advanced threat detection logging, right? So some of information or metadata around the threat signature, or maybe the exfiltration attempt itself will be logged as well. And you can adjust those metrics and logs into like S3 or land that data in somewhere where it persists and somewhere where you can visualize, right? So you can kind of build out your own kind of security command center, if you will, right? So I thought this was a pretty cool breakdown. I think I probably intend to set this up actually in my own lab in the future, just to make it a lot easier to digest how much noise, I'm responsible for, and how much noise a lot of our customers within the enterprise are responsible for, right, at scale. Yeah. So I thought those two were super cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's fun stuff. I saw a question as well from one of the users talking about CloudWatch log example, right? I think you covered that already. So as you said, you can configure the CloudWatch logs, and you can tell that, you can actually configure the query logging, and then you say the destination, right? Whether you want CloudWatch logs or S3 or even Kinesis, if I'm not wrong, right? So that's a lot of options there. And how does DNS tunneling work? That's actually beyond the scope of.
Oh boy.
We need more time, right? We'll probably write a Repost article to kind of explain that as well. Probably the right way to kind of address that as well, right? Cool. We have seen a lot of questions around billing as well. DNS, firewall. How do you do this billing and all? Some of the advanced features, right, which both Adish and we saw the demo from Lawton as well. For the advanced configuration, essentially, we charge an hourly fee for each DNS firewall rule group. That's the only charge, and we charge 16 cents per hour, right? So for some of the advanced configuration, we just charge 16 cents, right? That's essentially what we charge for these advanced configuration, which will give you a long, long set of features and functionalities to make you really, really secure, right? Which is pretty cool. Cool. I think we are almost up to time.
We're out of time.
I'd love to have more time to discuss more questions, but again, please be sure
to someone repost.
Yeah,
right. We're out of time, but
it's not just a platform to answer questions or ask questions. It's beyond that. We have articles, we have community groups, we have knowledge center articles. It's an amazing platform, right? And we have bots which can answer questions for you, which is pretty cool, right? Cool.
Yeah.
Any last
check us out?
Yeah.
No. Check us out. Repost live back Tuesday, Feb 11th, right? 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. I think I have coverage of that. We're going to be diving into some troubleshooting. So be sure to check out Repost Live. Thank you, guys.
Until next time.
Man, that song slaps harder than a belly flop from a 12-foot diving board. I tell you what, I like it a lot.
Tell me what? What will you tell me? What is this? What are you doing, Kyle?
What? Hey, so we did have a question in the chat on how does DNS tunneling work, and I do know someone that's qualified to answer that. Found him. So DNS tunneling. So again, DNS is like the address book of the internet, but DNS tunneling is when someone tries to use that address book in a sneaky way. It's when instead of just looking up the address of a website or where to find information, they try to hide information inside that address lookup, and that's like the TLDR of it.
We saw a little bit of that in Lawton's demo, right? Where part of the query was a
bunch of
URL,
gibberish,
right? Like it was a URL out to somewhere, right? Which shouldn't be in that query, I would imagine.
Yeah, and so while I was grabbing a croissant and attending the next Quamfwants, I decided, you know what? Maybe we should tell the audience about an amazing survey they can take. And if they are the first participants in that survey, they get $20 in AWS credits.
Yeah, we want to hear about what's the deal with AWS OnAir, and we want to hear that
why
from
do
you.
they let Kyle and AM do what they do? Why do they trust them with microphones and web cameras?
Yes, that's
and the
right.
public internet, I suppose.
I don't think anybody's given me official license to be here or do any of this, actually.
I mean, licenses are just a suggestion, right? Kind of like streetlights.
No,
What?
actually, it's upheld by law. Hearing all this stuff about security, about like figuring all these things out, I'm taken to one of my favorite heroes, a detective, Columbo.
There goes my hero.
You know Columbo?
No.
No? Oh well, you should
Sorry.
you should look up Columbo later. He always figures stuff out like that nobody else, like he sees all these little details, right? And that's kind of been like the theme of today. Of like people are hiding things in plain sight. You have to be observant. And I don't know, Kyle, do you have any people that yeah, there you go. Jib Jab knows Columbo. Just one more thing. He'll let you think that you're getting away with it. And then he'll go, just one more thing. And then ask you a question that totally exposes you as the criminal at the end of the show.
See, the only detective I grew up with was Inspector Gadget.
Okay. Is he a detective? I guess he's an inspector.
Yeah. Da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, true. I never thought about his title, actually, because he doesn't really do detective work, does he?
I mean, he's not like checking the safety of things either.
Jib Jab's got us again. Penny was the detective. That's true.
Penny
did it. Penny did all the work, and he
none
just
of the
had the
gadgets
title.
ever worked. I got a deep cut from the chat.
I'm actually hating the show now because Penny got none of the credit. She didn't get. It wasn't Inspector Penny. Should have been. Should have been. Penny.
Should have been. Could have been. Wasn't had.
Kyle,
you're really bringing me down, AM. Can we bring someone else in that's more fun?
Yeah. I was gonna say I love our Fridays here on air because it feels like going to a place where everybody knows your name, and I want to bring on somebody where everybody does know his name.
Literally,
everybody probably around the world knows his name. Do we want to talk to Jeff, Kyle?
Let's bring the intro. I want to talk to Jeff.
Okay, let's talk to
Jeff. Transition slide here. Click happy.
Kyle, AM,
Jeff.
Hey.
great to see you both.
How's it going?
I am still jet lagged. I came back on Sunday from an epic trip to Bangkok, Thailand, and Bangalore, India. My first time in both cities, and got to meet with a ton of developers in both, and to speak at AWS community events, and had an unbelievably good time. I'm still jet lagged. I don't know what it is, but the older I get, the harder it is to recover from jet lag.
They say for every hour that you travel ahead or behind, it takes an equivalent of a day per hour to recuperate from jet lag.
I believe that, but there's actually a round-off error here because I actually learned that Bangalore is on a 0.5 time zone, which is, yeah, exactly.
How's that? Make the math. That is.
I assume that they wanted to have one time. I haven't had a chance to research this, but I think they want to have one time zone for all of India in order to make it all work smoothly to give people reasonable times. They just said, you know what, make it 30 minutes off of the hour.
And this is why time zones are just a construct.
It's almost as if like humans just invented time, but we did it all individually and then didn't, have a system for it in place. When we
So
made
in
it
the
up.
in the FETS, the flat Earth time zone, it's all just one time zone.
Is it though?
Yeah.
But that also says that the sun would have to be flat. And I have evidence that it's not, right?
But in Kyle standard time.
Standard time.
Yeah.
Standard time. All right, I'll set my environment variable to KST and see what happens.
There we go. Well,
Amazing.
So Jeff, that is awesome. I mean, Bangkok, Thailand, Bangalore, and now back home to deliver us what is new in AWS. And if you know, chat audience, there's a lot that happens every week. And Jeff has the pleasure and the responsibility to bundle that all together, but also bring what's hot to the forefront.
All right.
Yes,
There was a ton of stuff, and because I was gone for the last 2 weeks, I only looked back a week, but I found 3 really cool things. But the first one I really like a lot is you now have the ability to actually refactor your CloudFormation stacks, and I like this because it helps you to like actually incrementally get better at using CloudFormation. So maybe you start off with like one all-encompassing template that's all your apps resources, kind of like a monolithic template. And then you start to get better at CloudFormation. You say, I actually want to start kind of breaking that one template apart, and maybe I want to reuse some pieces, or I want to be able to launch some of the bits independently. So you make some smaller and more purpose-directed micro templates, I guess. And or maybe you might have a situation where you have some organization-wide naming models, and then the naming for some of those resources changes. And you're thinking, how do I get that all pushed out to my resources without drifting away from the stack? So the cool thing that we're launching is this stack refactoring. So instead of having to do a bunch of error-prone manual operations and maybe breaking something, you actually hand CloudFormation multiple stacks that represent your new desired stack structure. It'll then give you a preview that basically says, I will reshuffle everything around into its new refact. And so basically like the association of resources to stacks is what's going to be changed by this refactor. You get the preview, then you say go, and it will atomically manage and reparent or reassign the ownership of all those resources in the stack. So you can do that, which is cool thing number one, this whole refactoring. But you can also supply a resource mapping file. And in there you give old names and new logical names for resources in a stack. So you can actually do in-place cleanup of like you might have started naming your things after like 1990s TV shows. And then you said, you know what, those are ancient. Let's use 2000 era TV shows. So you had like a Simpsons thing in there. And then you're like, okay, let's call it Miami Vice or something. And so you could actually do this in-place cleanup without adding any drift between the template, which is the source of truth, and then the reality, which is what you've already got. So that's really cool. Pretty easy to use. The one neat thing is when you do break up your templates, the ones that give you the little component pieces, you'll need to add some export statements into those. And then in your whatever might be like your top level template, you'll need to then import some resource names into there. So I think that's super, super, super cool. And we will drop a link to the blog post. That's cool thing number one, not to be confused with the things in green eggs and ham, which I think we covered last time.
Yeah. Speaking of 90s TV shows, Jeff, if you remember from Die Hard, they tell John McClane if he takes his shoes and socks off and then like makes balls with his feet on the carpet, that helps with jet lag. Which Die Hard, starring, of course, Carl Winslow from Family Matters.
What I learned is that if you don't wear socks and shoes, that you can go through an atrocious Christmas party at a company and come out unscathed.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. If you spent 10 years conditioning the soles of your feet beforehand.
Yep.
Okay.
Small detail. Okay, next cool thing is an update to Amazon Q Developer. So I think we've talked about Q Developer before. It helps you to write code. We call it the AI-powered coding assistant. So you make some requests in natural language and then writes code that you review and confirm that you actually get the code you wanted to that conforms to your expectations and your requirement. You can chat with Q to make incremental changes. So maybe it'll give you some initial code. And you're like, why don't you try this other way? And Q will say, okay, sure. Let me listen and I'll update it a bit. So you can do these incremental changes and improvements within Visual Studio Code or JetBrains, and we've actually got Eclipse in preview, all existing cool stuff. But what's new is that when you are writing your code, there's this new thing called an agent that after Q generates some code for you, but before it hands it back to you, it can actually run your own build and test scripts that can validate the code before you even have to review it. So if you say, hey, make me one of these, and Q makes you something, but there's a little bit of a hiccup, and it gives you something that's not quite right, and it doesn't compile or it doesn't run one of your tests, the agent will say, oops, that didn't work, and it'll actually iterate, and it will try to give you better code, and it'll actually retry up to 3 times to do that. And so you can actually watch in real time as all this happens. Super easy to set up. You create this thing called a dev file, and you just put any build, test, and install commands in there that define your development environment and tell the agent what to do. And one thing that's super important and super awesome about this is it actually all this code runs in a sandbox to protect the host environment and to make sure that it only does the things it's actually supposed to do. And again, we have a blog post for that one.
Nice.
Oh, okay. And one more cool thing is we've got some new permissions for EBS. And again, EBS it's not new news. EBS has been around for not quite as long as AM, but it's been around for a long time. And so with EBS, you can create volumes of virtually any size. It turns out up to 64 terabytes for IO2 Block Express, and just 16 terabytes for the other storage sizes. But that's still a gigantic volume.
That's huge.
Yeah, that's a lot of data. You could probably digitize every TV show from like 1990 to 2000, and they would all fit inside of 16 terabytes at high resolution. So not new at all. But and also not new is you can create snapshots, and you can keep those around, and you can use those to create fresh volumes. Again, not new stuff. What is actually finally a cool new thing is we've got some new permissions that give you more control over creating volumes. So you've got all these snapshots, and they're all in your account. Now you can actually decide 2 different things. You can decide which of the IAM identities are allowed to create volumes with create volume. So maybe you've got a bunch of snapshots for backups, and you say, okay, this one particular IAM user, they're the one we're going to actually give the duty and the responsibility of being able to create volumes to restore from snapshot backups. But you can also use some new condition keys in your policy. You can have write policies that reference, is the volume encrypted? Is it above or below or at a certain size? Does it have some specific owner? Was it taken at some particular snapshot time? And was it of a particular volume? So you can use these condition keys. You can also use global condition keys. So you got tons of control and tons of flexibility, which I always like to be able to talk about those kinds of things. Well, again, we will drop a link to a blog post in there. Those are my 3 cool things for today.
Those are fancy. I saw AM's little bit of steam coming out of AM's ears because he's the developer of at least the two of us. And so especially with that CloudFormation refactor, AM with the development genius that he is could create a bunch of little like nuggets that I could use as kind of like building blocks to build cool infrastructure without needing to know much about CloudFormation coding, I guess.
I was going to ask Kyle, what is refactoring? Because I always write perfect code the first time. How do you refactor what is already perfect?
Probably the same reason why you don't have a control key on your keyboard, because you're always in control.
Oh.
It's not needed.
No.
He doesn't have a keyboard. He plays guitar.
Yeah. Actually, he just stares at his screen and it does it by itself. He's just like,
but don't fret.
Yeah. Pretty soon with Q, that's how it will be. I've been using Q a ton. Actually, we over on the game day team, we were given a few weeks to come up with some kind of like blue sky ideas of stuff. So I spent the last couple weeks coding a bunch, which it's not a normal day-to-day thing for me these days. It used to be my day-to-day, but it was nice getting back into it. And it was nicer having kind of a position to be in to the conversations I used to have with myself which I still do, but I've started including Q in a lot of those conversations. And it's really interesting because I'll get, ideas from talking to Q while I'm programming that take me down a different path than I wasn't, necessarily thinking about. It's pretty cool. I really have enjoyed it. It's very nice to see all the new features coming out for it as well in VS Code.
Yeah.
So
Sorry,
when
Jeff
I was in
AM,
Bangalore, we
I
did
gotta-
this AWS. We did an AWS user group meeting in Bangalore, and so I gave a talk on future of development, which was cool. And then two of my colleagues, our colleagues, gave a talk about how you can actually use Q through your whole dev lifecycle, from like requirements to a spec to more details to like modules you want to actually do in the code. So they did that, and then toward the end of their presentation, they said, for anybody that would like, we have a little workshop set up, and we'll actually lead you through the actual process of doing this. And they've set aside a reasonably sized room in case anybody wanted to stay. Well, it turned out all 300 or so attendees of the user group meeting decided to stay. So we had the main room, an overflow room, and an overflow room, and everybody stayed for 2 hours actually listening and working and actually going hands-on with Q developers. So it was pretty awesome to see just how intense and how dedicated everybody was. They were just that utter like locked into the screen where there could be like a bomb going off outside. Nobody would ever even hear it because they're so focused on just doing something.
Kyle,
really hard.
who's on the phone?
That was our producer saying, "Hey, AM Kyle, don't forget to mention the survey at the end of the show, reminding you to let AWS OnAir know what you think of AWS OnAir." We'll post a link to the survey. Maybe
Wait, Tina called you?
yeah, she was like, "Kyle, come on."
Wow.
Whenever I hear survey, I can only think of that game show where the ding ding survey says. I don't even remember the
Survey says.
Family Feud.
Fill out
Feud,
the
yeah.
survey and for a chance for getting $20 in AWS credits if you're the first how many people to do the thing.
Oh yeah, I think all of our credits are gone now. I think we've already exhausted the our credit here.
Oh man,
I probably exhausted our producer's patience too. But hey,
the credit machine on the side, like kick it.
I just applied for too many credit cards all at once, so my credit is exhausted.
Oh, that's tiring.
Yeah, that's tiring. I like that response. That's an experience.
Only a street cred left, says Jim
Yeah.
Jab. That's
all right, friends. Well,
sad
it is time for us to wrap up this week's show of AWS OnAir. But guess what? Don't fret, because next week we'll be back, same place, same time. We'll be
Same
on
bad
channel.
We'll be on-
Jeff,
High five.
look at that. Look at that.
And on that note,
we could not have scripted that.
same place, same time, not the same hosts.
Yeah.
Thankfully for y'all.
What about time zones?
What about what?
Time zones.
Time zones.
Yeah.
Kyle specific. Kyle Standard Time, 12 p.m. And if you need to collaborate or calibrate, that's the word I'm looking for. It's Friday.
Calculate.
If you need to calibrate, that is 12 p.m. Pacific time. Everyone have a wonderful weekend. Be safe. Have fun. Birds aren't real. Earth is flat. Bye-bye.
That's not.